Hello, hello. A little while back, Bill Maher had a little rant about libertarians. So here's my response to that. So he begins his monologue being kind of sympathetic, talking about how he wants the government to stay out of his life, particularly when it comes to things like, sex and drugs and whatnot. And that's all fine and good. But I think he's missing the deeper principle here. Bill Maher is what I would call a pot and hookers libertarian. And while, yes, most libertarians think those things should be legal, there's a deeper moral principle why they believe that. A principle I don't think Bill Maher fully understands. And then once he finishes his little introduction, here come the old chestnuts and the straw men. So the first old chestnut is about how libertarians are all brainwashed young males who like Ayn Rand, and that's the only reason why they're libertarians is because they read Atlas Shrugged and it fried their brains, and that's that. There's no mention of any other libertarian thinkers, Spooner or Bastiat, Hayek, Friedman, Sowell. No. Apparently, Ayn Rand invented libertarianism all at once in the 1940s in a novel, and there's no need to consider any of these other thinkers, or the possibility that maybe people became libertarians by studying these writings of these various thinkers and coming to accept those views. And moving along to old chestnut number 2, we talk about how libertarians are supposedly young and naive, whereas in reality, among people under 30, liberals outnumber all the other political groups by a margin of about 2 to 1. So that doesn't really fly. And of course, I think it's been attributed to Churchill, but the old saying, if you're younger than 30 and you're not a liberal, you have no heart. And if you're older than 30 and you're not a conservative, you have no brain. Well, there's a reason why that saying exists. Very few people, a lot of people go from being liberal to conservative or libertarian as they age. Very few people go the other way. And I think there's a good reason for that. And he has another aside about how devotion to the free market is somehow creepy. I wouldn't call it devotion. I wouldn't really call it creepy. Capitalism isn't a system, it's the system. It is mankind's most underrated invention. It's lifted more people out of poverty than anything. And it's the founding philosophy, part of the founding philosophy of this country. I don't see how anybody who is an ardent supporter of it could be creepy or kooky or whatever. And then move on to the straw man arguments. He talks about how libertarians supposedly hate roads and traffic lights, public libraries, and so on. I've never heard a libertarian argue against any of those basic, indispensable local services. Libertarians are almost always arguing about things like the war on drugs, the income tax, America being the policeman of the world, that stuff. It's not the things like roads or sewage treatment plants that bother libertarians or courts or police. It's all the other bullshit the federal government mostly does that they get upset about. And the second straw man he has is, of course, if libertarians had their way, there would be no Social Security or Medicare, and because of that, the corpses would pile up in the streets, and there would be human skeletons shitting into rivers and all kinds of nonsense. Was any of that stuff happening before those programs existed? No. I don't recall reading in American history that there was mass starvation and plague before Medicare was, signed into law, or old people were pushed onto ice floes before Social Security existed. Complete nonsense. However, there are countries in this world where corpses do pile up in the streets and where there are human skeletons shitting into rivers. And they're in places like India, North Korea, Zimbabwe, Cuba, places where liberals and people who are even more left-wing than that were in charge. And it's interesting to note that in the places where left-wing ideology is taken to its logical extreme, you end up with a very sort of dystopia that liberals are supposedly worried that libertarians are going to create. So kind of interesting there. And I guess to summarize, I mean, my one-word rebuttal to all liberal policies and proposals is Detroit. They had Detroit for 40 years. They did everything they wanted. It's a complete mess. So that's my one-word rebuttal to that. I guess in closing, I liked his movie Religulous. It came out a few years ago that poked fun at Christians and Jews, Scientology, and religion in general. And it's a shame that he can't turn that same skeptical eye towards the left. Team Blue, I think, be a better appellation. And he styles himself as a libertarian and an independent thinker. I think he's a progressive of the most common variety. A guy who's kind of smart, but not really. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Thanks for watching.